Number three, again, if we're thinking silos, where I said my silo on my fundamental knowledge is pretty full. I could improve my knowledge of post processing. I could fill that silo more. Fieldcraft is something you're never going to fill. You're gonna never going to fill your silo on for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's too much to know. And number two, animals are animals and they're going to do what they're going to do. So, but fieldcraft, if you know a little bit of fieldcraft, if you know your animals you're trying to photograph, it really does help predict your future. And so one of the first things on fieldcraft is just understanding animal behavior. It's a good place to start. I did a webinar about this last week for the Journal of Wildlife Photography, and that's what I kept telling them. It's just really a good way for you to really watch an animal in the field and just have a good understanding of what may come next. And so I'm going to share with you a case study in a minute, exactly how it happened. And so here's the scenario for you. My dog goes to the front door and he just stands there. What do you think's going to happen? What do you think that he wants? He's telling me he wants outside. He's got to go to the bathroom. And so that's a little bit what I mean by predictive behavior. So I'll tell you more about this picture here in a little bit. And so by taking the time to learn animal behavior, it helps you hone some valuable skills when it comes to nature photography. Number one, it teaches you the value of anticipation. You know, one of the biggest skills that you can learn as a wildlife photographer is just anticipating the action. Because as you know, a lot of times the action happens fast and you're not ready for it and you miss the shot. And so by learning animal behavior, again, it's not 100%, this is not 100% uh, of the time it's going to work, but the stuff really does work. If you understand, you can anticipate what's about to happen. I'm going to tell you that story in a minute. It also gives you the chance of projection. So what I mean by that is, if I see my dog headed towards the front door, I'm anticipating maybe what he's going to do next. And then when he gets to the front door and stop, I'm going to make the projection that he wants to go outside. And so I'm going to open the door for him and let him outside. And so it gives you a chance not only anticipate what's going to happen, but to say this, if this animal does A, then B is going to happen. It gives you a chance to project it. And the more you know, the better you get at this. And then patience. I wrote a story for a magazine, came out in January, and it was kind of aimed at sort of everyone who's got some sort of passing interest in wildlife photography. And one of the things I told them, the key thing is you got to have patience, you know. Sometimes things work out for you. A lot of times animals are animals. They're going to move when they're going to move, and sometimes it doesn't. And so another thing it teaches you is the value of patience. This old saying is so true when it comes to wildlife. If you're, and I'm not going to say it's going to be this way all the time, but this is the way I lean most of the time. If we're at a spot and we see a black bear out in the field, and that black bear is just kind of milling around, he's laying down, he's not doing much. You know, the old thought in mind, what if we drive down the road? Is there a black bear closer? Well, you don't know because a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. If you know what's there, if you've got the patience to wait on it and you can watch it and you know you can anticipate and project what may happen next and you've got the patience to throw in there, then sometimes it's best just to wait out an animal and see what's going to happen. Because a lot of times you never know. They may get up and walk straight towards you and be a whole lot closer. And then probably the most important thing, the skill you learn is the skill of curiosity. The better I get at this skill set when it comes to nature photography, the more I want to learn about the next animal I don't know so much of. You again using Yellowstone as an example, you go to Yellowstone and you take a picture of the pikas and you go to a place where you're going to see pikas and when you first look at it, it's like playing whack-a-mole. You just don't know where they're going to pop up and you don't know how often they're going to pop up. And so out of curiosity, the first time I saw them, is there any kind of ideas I can use to sort of increase my odds of getting pictures of these? And yeah, I noticed that when they would pop up, a lot of times they'd have their favorite rock. And so if I just waited that favorite rock, a lot of times they'd come up on it. They'd be there for just 5 or 10 seconds. I'd be ready, take pictures, and they'd move on. But just out of curiosity and wanting to learn more, I think the curiosity is the best skill to have because it makes you want to learn more. You get motivated to learn more. uh, Today with our smartphones and our access to things like Wikipedia or some of the nature sites that will teach you about animals, it's just a great resource to have and a great way to learn when you're on the go and in the field. I failed to mention this, but since I saw these birds, I remember a couple of pretty basic fieldcraft ideas almost everybody knows, especially when it comes to like anticipation. If you see a bird sitting on a limb and it takes a poop, almost everybody that's ever shot animals have heard this before. You know what's going to happen next. He's probably about to take off. But if you take the wind into effect and you're trying to figure out where these birds are going to land, then you can project the way they're going to land because you know birds always take off and land into the wind. And you can project which way they're going to come in and set yourself up in the best uh, possible position to get the shot that you're looking for. And so here's my case study I was talking about. And this case study was part of the journal webinar I did last week. And it's actually out of my Yellowstone trip I did back in early February, and I call it the Jumping Coyote. So we were in Hayden Valley in a snow coach, and in the distance we saw a couple of coyotes that were hunting together in the field, and one coyote broke off from another, and I knew just based on uh, my knowledge of coyotes, I don't know everything there is to know about coyotes. I'm not a biologist. I have a degree in agriculture, and so I can't even tell you what cows are going to think most of the time. But I knew in my knowledge of coyotes that I'd learned not only from reading in books, but also experience watching them. They hunt into the wind. And so one of them turned right into the wind and it started hunting up this little seam of landscape, this low area. And I told everybody, I said, that coyote may, if we wait here, that coyote, because when we first saw them, they're a long way off. I said, if we wait here, that coyote may end up coming up right next to us. It may come up right there. And sure enough, I was right. Came, 40 yards away from us, just right in front of us, and we're watching it. And so at first, the coyote's just cruising along, minding its own business, kind of in a slow trot. Again, it's hunting into the wind. The reason why predators hunt into the wind is they want the wind in their face, so the wind is blowing from the prey to them and they can smell it. If it's the opposite, if the wind's blowing from their butt past their head towards the prey is going to smell them, and they're going to be able to hide before they see them. So, predators like coyotes and bobcats use the element of surprise to sneak up on their subjects, and they always hunt into the wind, or they almost always hunt into the wind. And so, because he was hunting into the wind, I was watching for one particular movement, and then he did it right there. And I'll go back one. You can see his head's kind of low, ears are erect, head's low, eyes are wide open. Then all of a sudden, he heard something. If you've got a dog or a cat, you've seen them do this before when they get curious about something. He stopped for just a second, cocked his head, and his eyes narrowed just a little bit. And he did this for maybe 5 to 10 seconds. And I told everybody that was standing around me, I said, get ready. I think you're about to see a pounce. Because he had locked in on something he had heard. He was ready for it. And then sure enough, thanks to the miracle of everybody being ready and pre-capture, that came in handy too. Everyone got the complete sequence of this jump. And I could show you all the pictures, but I didn't see any really need to. But everybody got the complete sequence of this jump from beginning to end. And this is just my favorite one of all of them. Because I had a good handle on the fundamentals of photography, that first silo, I was able to know how I should set my camera beforehand. Number two, because I had a pretty good understanding of the post-processing options, which this one really didn't take much. I knew kind of what I needed to accomplish. And then number three, because I had some semblance of fieldcraft and I knew a little bit about animal behavior just from time in the field and going out and practicing it, I was ready for this moment and told everyone else to be ready for it. And I'm not going to say I took this picture. I'm going to say we took this picture as a group. Everyone that was there with us that day was standing right beside us and we all took the same shot. And it's a remarkable shot. I've taken a lot of coyote pictures and right now this is my favorite of all of them. And you can see the tech specs there. I shot a Canon R5 Mark II camera. That's what I shoot, it's Canon camera. A Canon 500 millimeter EF lens. I've had that lens forever. It weighs a ton, but it's such a good lens, and Canon hadn't remade it yet. I bet I've had that lens 20 or 25 years. It's the old version. A 1.4 teleconverter. I shot this at 1/2000th of a second at f5.6. And remember, I talked about that earlier. I knew a shallow depth of field with the background far off would render the kind of background that I think is most aesthetically pleasing in pictures. And that's what I did there. But look at the ISO. All I needed was 320. Shot at low ISO, so that saved me a step in the post processing. I don't have to do any kind of noise reduction or anything else. And then I know because based on experience, if pictures have a bright background like snow, cameras will almost always tend to underexpose an image. And so I knew because the camera would tend to underexpose that I had to add light back to it. So I had to dial +1 in exposure compensation. And you can do that. You can do that in manual mode. I shoot in aperture priority. That's the mode that's always worked best for me. Again, in the spirit of Russell proofing things with aperture priority, I set my ISO. All I have to worry about is what aperture I want to set, and then the camera sets the shutter speed. Most of the time, the camera will get the shutter speed right, but in times when you have a bright background like snow, or a dark background like shadows, I just know from experience that it's either going to be a +1 if you're taking pictures on the snow or a -1 if you're shooting pictures against a really dark background. Like the pelican picture we showed a while ago, that was a -1 just to get because the background overwhelmed the space in the scene, and because it did that, the camera would tend to overexpose it. It would blow out the pelican, and it would I think I said crane earlier. It would blow out the pelican and it would cause the shadows not to look like shadows. It would try to bring detail into the shadows. And so just knowing that stuff, understanding the fundamentals, helped me make the decisions on the camera setting before the action even happened. And then understanding a little bit of fieldcraft and knowing what I was looking at and being able to predict accurately what that coyote was about to do, then it helped create this picture. Now, you could argue and say, and it's a valid argument, you could say, well, the coyote might not have did that. You know, a broken clock is right twice a day. But yeah, as long as you know a broken clock is correct twice a day, that's okay too. Because with me, I just knew when I saw that movement, there's a pretty good chance we're about to see a pounce. And if he wouldn't have done it, we still got cool pictures of him cocking his head. But the fact he did do it, everybody was ready. Everybody got the shot. Hmm. And so here's some practice protocols for you. Pick an animal or two and start studying what you can about that animal's behavior. So, in other words, my favorite animals are deer species, and I like wild turkeys. And so, one of the things I've committed myself to is learning about deer species. A good example here, this is a desert mule deer. We saw this in Bosque del Apache. This may be one of the finest examples of a desert mule deer you've ever seen. It's almost like a unicorn in the fact that it's got those double drop tines that hang off the beams, and it's got the extra points that stick off to the side. They call them sticker points. So it's got the extra stickers, it's got the extra drop tines. I've seen thousands of desert mule deer in my life. You'll see this some in Rocky Mountain subspecies of mule deer, but in desert mule deer, it's a pretty rare phenomenon. And just to see this and recognize how special that animal uh, was just a treat to behold. Now, when we spotted the animal, it was making a rub, and you can see the wood shavings in its antlers. It was rubbing its antlers against a tree, a common thing that animals do like that, bucks do like that during the breeding season. And you can see by how thick his neck is and how robust his shoulders is, it was during the rut. He was looking for a mate. So he was trying to strengthen up in case he got into a fight. That was his daily workout. But he went, and this is how quick animals change their mind. He went from making the rub to immediately, for no reason, nothing we did. He just turned and decided it was time to leave, and he was standing in water when he was making the rub. So he did his mule deer bound through the water and he was making his way through the water. I told everybody, because I've seen deer do it so many times, get ready, because a lot of times, whatever spooked him, he's going to stop and take a look back at it. So be ready, because that deer is going to get to high ground and he's going to stop. And sure enough, just because I understood that habit of deer and I understand their creatures of habits, that's exactly what he did. And turned out what spooked him was there was a person down the road that was out of a car. He didn't really mind us because we're all right by the vehicle and we look like a vehicle to him, but someone walking down the road is what spooked him. But we were still able to get this shot of this mule deer right before he left and left our lives forever. And I'll probably never see him again. But I'm lucky we were there to see him when we saw him. And so pick an animal or two, start learning all you can about the behavior. There's all kinds of stuff you can learn, like all kinds of resources, books, websites, all kinds of stuff. If you look for it enough, you're going to find it. And then you'll start learning things like not about deer or turkeys, but wading birds like cranes. Cranes really do a really exaggerated version of it. Sandhill cranes, they'll often lean right before they take off. And so they'll test the wind and they'll lean into the wind. And then all of a sudden, if you wait long enough, if you see that lean, get ready because he's about to take off. And they almost always do. Or you may learn something like if a deer turns to look at you like it's curious about you, get ready because it may raise its foot up and give it a stomp. And a lot of times, just that one little bit of body English goes a long way of making that picture look a lot better. To me, that picture, because that deer has got that front right leg up a little bit, is a better shot than if he was standing all forward because he looks like he's anticipating about having to do something. And a lot of times in photo contests, it's those little things that make a big difference on how your pictures place.